In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use the ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo model and store and create conversations between the model and store them in a MongoDB for later use. To get started on this API, first thing we want to do is initialize a new npm project, so an npm init. Just say yes to all of those. Right, as you can see as well on the left hand side here, we've just had package.json created. I do have an environment file and a sample environment file. The environment file contains my API key and the Mongo URI. So this is working with a local Mongo database. You can pop in here the URI to your database. It could be stored anywhere. And this API key, I've blocked out the center part for obvious reasons, but this is how your environment file should look. Okay, so from here we want to install a few packages. We're going to run npm I, we're going to install OpenAI, that's how we're going to communicate with OpenAI. We're going to install Express, this is what we're going to be creating our framework with. Body parser, this is to ensure that we pass JSON back in the body. Cause, this is just for security, and mongoose. This is how we're going to communicate with our MongoDB. We hit enter. Okay, so once those are installed, we can check in our package.json file and we can see that they've all installed here. So let's now create an index.js file. This is where all of our main content's going to go. So we're going to import a few things here. So let's first of all import OpenAI. So const, and we're going to import configuration and OpenAI API, just lowercase pi. And that will be from require OpenAI. Now we can import Express, so we've got const express equals require express. And let's do the same for body parser. Const body parser is equal to require body parser. Do the same for cause. Const cause is equal to require cause. And then const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. So to get our data from the environment file, first thing we need to do is also require .env.config, and this will ensure that we get our information from this environment file. Right, so to work with Mongo, we need to create a couple of models. So let's create a new folder, and we call that models. I'm going to create two files in here, one called conversation.js, and the other one is going to be called message.js. Now conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to import mongoose, and then we're going to create a conversation schema, and that will be a new mongoose schema, and we're just going to have an empty schema for this. We just want to create the ID, and that will be passed on to the messages. Then we want to export this by saying module.exports is equal to mongoose model conversation and then the conversation schema. So this will just create an ID for us. I'll show you what happens in the MongoDB later. And then messages, we want to re-import the mongoose. And then we're going to create a message schema. Now inside this message schema, we're going to have a conversation. And that conversation is going to be a type of mongoose.schema.types.object_id. And we're going to be looking at the reference for the conversation for this one. We're also going to make that as required true. Next we have role. This will be of type string, and it's going to be required true. Now for the content, this will be a string and required true again. And then we're going to have a timestamp. And this will be a type of date, and we're going to default that to date.now. I'm going to set required to false. And the same as we did for the conversation, we need to do module.exports equals mongoose.module, and then message, and then export the message schema. So once that's done, we can click save, and we can actually close those two down, and we can import those into our index.js file. To do this, we say const message is equal to require ./models/messages, And the same for conversation will be const conversation is equal to require models conversation. So with that done, let's now set up a connection to our mongoose database. So we can say mongoose.connect, and this will be process.env.mongo_URI. Now we can actually connect to that by saying const db equals mongoose.connection. So with the database connection in place, we can actually start creating our application. So let's run const app is equal to express. We want to tell the app to use body parser .json, and we also want to tell the app to use the cause as well. Underneath here, we want to now create a config for the OpenAI. So we can say const config will be equal to new configuration, and the API key will be equal to process.env.api_key. Then we can close that off. And now we can create our actual instance of OpenAI. So we say const OpenAI is equal to new OpenAI API, and then we inject the config class that we set up here. So with all that done, we can actually start creating our endpoints now. So the first endpoint we want to create is the post endpoint. This is to create a message. So app.post. I'm going to call this endpoint message. Now that will take in a request and it will return a response. So inside of here, I want to check to see if the message here, we're also going to append a /ID on the end of it. Now I'm going to say if request.params.id is equal to new. Then we want to create a new conversation. We want to save that conversation. So this is just going to create an empty conversation for us, and that will return a promise with our new conversation in, so we can use the ID that returns. So under here, we want to now create a new message. This message will be from the user, so it will have a role of user. The content will be from the request.body.message.content, and the conversation will be the conversation ID that we get from here. So that will actually create a new message for us. So once we've done that, we want to save that message. And then what we want to do after we save that message is actually make our call to OpenAI. So we'll say OpenAI.create chat completion. And we're going to be using the GPT4 turbo model for this. So we say model is equal to GPT-3.5-turbo. And the messages that we want to send it will be an array, and it will be request.body.message. Then we can close that off. And then with the data we get back from this, what we want to do is we want to create a brand new message in the database. So we can create a new message. And that new message will have a role of assistant. The content will be from data.choices. We'll take the first instance from that, and we .message.content. We also want to pass in the conversation ID again, so we can reference that as well. So once we've done this, we can save that message. And then with that information, what we can do is we can send that back to the person who requested it. So we say res.send. I'm going to send an object. Because this is a new conversation, we have message. It's going to be equal to data.data.choices, the first instance .message.content, the same as above. And we're also going to send back the conversation ID. So on the front end, when we trigger this and we get this conversation ID, we can reroute to this particular conversation. We now go to the bottom, just before this last bracket, we need to add an extra close in here and also another one. So that's the information for if it's a new message. What we want now is to create an else statement. And this is going to be if we have an ID actually in the URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference the conversation model. And we're going to do find by ID. And that's going to take in the request.params.id. And it's going to pass back the conversation. And then we want to say message.find. And we're going to find all the conversations with that conversation ID. And that should now pass back all those messages. Now this will pass back every single message that we've stored against this conversation. With ChatGPT, when you send the information over, each word counts as a token. So we probably don't want to get absolutely everything. For this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort the data by the timestamp. So I'm going to put .sort and then the timestamp. So we're actually going to get those in reverse order. And then I'm going to limit the actual amount of data we get back to 5. You can increase and decrease this as much as you want, but this will just pass back X amount of messages, excluding the message that we just sent across. So that will also include messages from the user and messages from the AI. And this is to keep the conversation rolling. I'll show you an example in a bit. So once we've done that, we now want to create a new message. And this message will have a role of user. The content will be request.body.message.content, and we want to pass that conversation ID across as well. And once that's done, we want to save it. And then we want to trigger the OpenAI request. So we say OpenAI.create chat completion, create an object in here. So this can be slightly different from last time. We're going to use the same model, but messages will now be equal to an array of ... messages. And then we're going to map, because of the way the information is stored, we have IDs, we have versions, and there's a lot of information there that if we were to send it over to the GPT model, it would just return with an error. So we're going to map this data and actually reduce it down. So in here we put message, and then what we want to do is we want to return content. Let's wrap this whole return inside of a curly brackets as well. So content will be message.content, and then we have a comma, and we'll say role will be equal to message.role. And then with that information, what we want to do is we want to just reverse it. And then also append onto the end of this the request.body.message. So the latest message that we have will be the one that's sent across last. So with all that set up, it returns a promise. So we can say .then, and then it's going to return some data. And then we can create a new message. And that message will have a role of assistant. The content will be data.choices, the first instance of that, then .message.content, and then we're going to pass through that conversation ID again. So once that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to save it, and then we're going to return another promise. And inside this promise, we're actually going to return the data back to the user now. So this time, all we want to do is res.send, and we just want to send the actual message across. So message, and that'll be equal to data.choices 0.message.content. And that should be all we need to pass back from that. So now we can close off all of these promises above and close off the route as well. So this is the route to actually create a message. So now let's create a route to get all the conversations based on their ID. So to do that, we do app.get, and we want conversations with a semicolon ID at the end. And that is going to be simple. We're going to reference a conversation. We're going to do find by ID, request.params.id. That returns a promise of conversations. And then what we want to do is we want to say message.find, and then we're going to reference the conversation ID inside of here. And then inside that promise, we're going to do a res.send on the messages there and make sure we close all those promises off. That's nice and simple on that one. And then I think we should have a delete as well. So let's do app.delete. And what we can do here, we can delete using the conversation ID and then delete all the messages as well. So we take the conversation ID in here again, and we'll say message.delete many, and then we're going to delete all of the items with the conversation of the ID from the parameter here. And then inside of that promise, what we can do is we can say conversation.find by ID and delete, pass in the ID again. And then from there, inside the promise, we want to say res.send, and the conversation's been deleted. Let's close off all of these promises again, and also the route. So that's all the actual endpoints we need for this. So now we can say app.listen, and we're going to listen on port 3000. And we're going to console log out the server has started on port 3000. So if we now click save and we run this with node dot, hopefully we won't get any errors. We've got one error here. Can't find .env, so I forgot to install .env. So we npm i.env, run node again. I've misspelt configuration up here. Add a capital O in it. Let's just check that's working. Yeah, that's working. Let's try rerunning again. There we go. Server has started on port 3000. So if we open up Postman, here's one that I set up earlier. We have our IP address, our port number, /message/new, and inside the body content here, I've got a raw JSON, and we're going to have message, and we have got a role of user and the content saying what is my name. If we hit submit, we get, I'm sorry, I'm an AI model, I don't have access to your personal information. So if we copy this conversation ID here, and then paste that into here, what I can say is, my name is Coding Nexus, hit send. So I've got an error on line 61. I'm missing the S off of this here from when we pass back the messages from here. So this message is here. I was missing the S on the end here. So we click save and restart that. Go back into Postman. We can hit submit on this again. So we can see here that I've asked it, I've told it what my name was, and it's apologized. And it's saying its name is Coding, my name is Coding Nexus. And let's now ask it again, what is my name? Click send, and it should now come back with your name is Coding Nexus. So if we now create a new one and we ask it, what is my name? Click send. We can see it's created a whole new conversation. And what we can do is we have this ID here. We can get rid of this and we can say conversations / and then the ID, click send. We need to change it to a get, click send. And we should have now the actual string of messages that it's sent. And then if we open up, for example, our MongoDB campus, we have a test database here with conversations and messages. If I refresh this here, we can see we've got 3 conversations. If I refresh this, we can see that we've got all our messages stored in the database here. So we can also delete these. So if we move this to a delete and we still have our conversation with that ID in, we click send, we can see the conversation's been deleted. If we go back into the conversation database, it's now down to 2. Let's copy this ID out, paste it into here, click send, that's deleted as well. And same for this one. Paste that in, click send. that conversation was deleted as well. We can also see that all the messages have also been deleted. In the next video, I'll show you how to use this on the front end as well. So we'll tie straight into this API and it will show all of the conversations on the screen. If you found this video useful, hit the subscribe and the like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.